I drove for a rideshare app for almost 3 years. In that time, I'd picked up just about every kind of passenger you could imagine. Drunk college students, businessmen rushing to the airport, couples arguing in the back seat, like I wasn't even there. It became routine. Every ride started to blend into the next, until one Friday in November. It had been raining since sunset, not a heavy storm, just one of those endless drizzles that made every streetlight look blurry through the windshield. Business was slow, and I figured I'd take one more ride before calling it a night. At 1:43 a.m., a request came through. The pickup point was a small gas station on the edge of town. The destination was about 25 minutes away, somewhere near an old farming community I'd never been to. The passenger's name was simply E. When I pulled into the station, the parking lot was empty except for a black pickup truck parked beside the air pump. No one was standing outside. I waited for about 30 seconds before I noticed someone sitting on the curb near the side of the building. A young woman. She stood up slowly and walked toward my car. She looked to be in her mid-20s. Long dark hair, gray hoodie soaked from the rain. No luggage, no purse, just a phone clutched tightly in both hands. She climbed into the back seat without saying a word. "Evening," I said. "Nothing." I checked the mirror. She was staring out the window. I shrugged it off and started driving. About 10 minutes passed in complete silence. The GPS suddenly announced that the route ahead was closed and suggested a shortcut through a county road. Normally I ignored shortcuts at night, but this one supposedly saved almost 12 minutes. I tapped accept. That was my mistake. The road became narrower with every mile. Street lights disappeared. Soon it was just trees, rain, darkness. The kind of darkness where your headlights feel too weak. I glanced into the mirror again. The woman hadn't moved. Then she quietly asked, "Did your GPS tell you to come this way?" Her voice caught me off guard. "Yeah," I replied. Another few seconds passed. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. It always does. I laughed nervously. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned toward the window and whispered, "Don't stop for anyone." A cold feeling settled in my chest. Is something wrong? She slowly shook her head. "They'll pretend they're hurt." I looked ahead. Nothing but wet pavement. Then, about 50 yards in front of us, someone was standing in the middle of the road. A man. He wore what looked like a reflective construction vest. He was waving both arms. As I got closer, I noticed his face. It looked wrong. His mouth was open unnaturally wide. Too wide. Almost like he was smiling without moving the rest of his face. He pointed toward the trees beside him, as if someone needed help. Every instinct told me to stop. Then I remembered what the passenger had said. "Don't stop for anyone." I swerved around him. As we passed, he slammed both hands against the passenger side window. Bang! I nearly lost control. In the mirror, I watched him remain perfectly still in the road until he disappeared behind us. Neither of us spoke. I accelerated. My hands were shaking. About 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, I answered using Bluetooth. "Hello?" Static. Then a man's voice. "You missed your turn." "I don't think so. You need to come back." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "You left someone behind." The call disconnected. I looked at my passenger. She hadn't reacted, almost like she'd expected it. A minute later, the GPS rerouted again. It instructed me to make a U-turn. I refused. Then it rerouted again, every 30 seconds. Turn around, turn around, turn around. Eventually, I pulled over just long enough to switch off navigation completely. The woman finally spoke. "They don't like when people leave." I stared at her in the mirror. "Who?" She looked out the window. "I don't know." The rest of the drive felt endless. Finally, we reached the destination. It was an old farmhouse with only one porch light on. She stepped out. Before closing the door, she leaned down and said, "You were the first driver who didn't stop." Then she walked inside. No goodbye, no smile, nothing. I drove home without another passenger. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I searched the farmhouse address online. Nothing. No records. No property listing. Just one old newspaper article from almost 12 years earlier. It mentioned a string of armed robberies targeting late-night taxi drivers along that exact county road. The suspects had used fake roadblocks to force drivers to stop. 3 drivers were killed over 2 months. The crimes were never solved. I sat there staring at the article for several minutes. Then I opened the rideshare app. I wanted to see the previous night's trip details. The pickup location was still there. The destination wasn't. Instead, it simply read, "Trip unavailable." The passenger profile had disappeared too. No rating, no payment history, nothing. It was as if the ride had never happened. I contacted support later that day, thinking it was just a bug. After looking into it, the representative told me something strange. According to their system, I had ended my shift at 1:36 a.m., 7 minutes before I supposedly accepted that ride. They insisted I hadn't completed a single trip after that. I checked my dash cam, hoping it would clear everything up. The footage showed me driving the entire route. The rain, the empty road, the man standing in front of the car. Everything except the back seat. It was empty from the moment I left the gas station until I arrived at the farmhouse. To this day, I still drive. But whenever the GPS suggests a shortcut down an unfamiliar road after midnight, I cancel the ride. Some fares simply aren't worth taking. I took a job as a night security guard during my last year of college. The pay wasn't great, but it was easy money. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. All I had to do was patrol an old office building every hour, check the doors, and make sure no one broke in. The building had 6 floors. During the day, it was full of accountants, insurance agents, and lawyers. At night, it became completely silent. The first week was uneventful. Every hour, I'd make the same rounds. First floor, second floor, third floor, all the way to the roof. Nothing ever happened. By the second week, I stopped feeling nervous. I started watching movies on my phone between patrols, and even looked forward to the quiet. One Friday night, around 2:15 a.m., the receptionist's phone rang. It surprised me because the phone had never rung after business hours. I stared at it for several seconds before answering. There was only static. Then a woman whispered, "Third floor." The line went dead. I figured someone was trying to prank the building security line. I grabbed my flashlight and took the elevator to the 3rd floor anyway. Everything looked normal. The hallway lights were on. Every office door was locked. Nothing seemed out of place. As I turned to leave, I heard footsteps somewhere behind me. Slow, steady, like dress shoes walking across tile. I spun around. The hallway was empty. The footsteps stopped immediately. I waited almost a full minute before returning downstairs. The rest of the night passed without incident. The following evening, I told another guard about the phone call. He didn't laugh. Instead, he asked one question. "Did you answer it?" I told him I had. He sighed. Then he said the receptionist's phone had been disconnected years ago after renovation. It wasn't connected to anything anymore. I assumed he was joking. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I walked behind the reception desk. The phone cord had been cut clean off. There wasn't even a cable running into the wall. That should have been enough for me to quit. Instead, I convinced myself someone had replaced it as a joke. Around 3 a.m., while reviewing security cameras, one monitor flickered. Camera 3, the 3rd floor hallway. For just a second, I thought I saw someone standing near the emergency exit. The image stabilized. Nobody. A minute later, the motion detector activated on the same floor. I checked the live feed again. Nothing. Protocol required me to investigate. I hated every second of the elevator ride. When the doors opened, the hallway was completely still. The only sound was the buzzing of fluorescent lights overhead. I slowly walked toward the emergency exit. Halfway there, the lights went out. Pitch black. I froze. The emergency lights switched on a second later, bathing the hallway in a dim red glow. That's when I noticed something. Every office door was open. I knew for a fact they had all been locked. I had checked them less than an hour earlier. One by one, the doors began closing, not slamming, just slowly swinging shut. Click, 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 click. The sound echoed to the hallway until only one office remained open, the one at the very end. I should have left. Instead, I walked toward it. Inside was an empty conference room. Long table, 8 chairs, projector, nothing unusual. Then I noticed the 9th chair. It faced the corner instead of the table. Someone was sitting in it. I couldn't see their face, only the back of their head. Dark hair, gray suit, perfectly still. I called out. No response. Thinking it might be a homeless person, I stepped closer. The chair slowly began turning toward me. I didn't wait to see who was in it. I ran. By the time I reached the elevator, every hallway light had come back on. The office doors were closed again. Everything looked completely normal. I reported the incident to my supervisor the next morning. He listened quietly before opening an old filing cabinet. From inside, he pulled out a newspaper clipping. 10 years earlier, an accountant had stayed late to finish paperwork. Co-workers found him dead in the 3rd floor conference room the next morning. He had suffered a fatal heart attack while sitting alone. The strange part wasn't how he died. It was where he was found. He had been sitting in the 9th chair, facing the corner, exactly as I had seen it. I quit that afternoon. A month later, I met one of the building's cleaning staff at a grocery store. When I mentioned why I left, she looked uncomfortable. She told me everyone who worked nights avoided the 3rd floor after 3 a.m., not because they believed in ghosts, because every person who ignored that rule eventually resigned within a week. None of them ever explained why. A few days ago, I drove past that same office building. It had been renovated again. New windows, fresh paint, different company. It looked nothing like I remembered. Out of curiosity, I searched the company's website. They had uploaded photos of every floor. When I reached the gallery for the 3rd floor, I froze. The conference room had been remodeled. New carpet, new furniture, new lighting. But one thing hadn't changed. There were still 9 chairs, and the 9th chair was facing the corner. I never believed people who said certain houses felt wrong. A house was just a house. Old wood creaked. Pipes made noise. The wind rattled windows. There was always a logical explanation. At least, that's what I believed until I agreed to house sit for my uncle. He and his family were leaving for 2 weeks to attend a wedding overseas. Since I worked remotely, he offered to pay me to stay at the house, feed the dog, water the plants, and make sure everything was okay. It sounded like the easiest money I'd ever make. The house sat at the end of a quiet street, surrounded by tall oak trees. It wasn't isolated, but it felt that way once the sun went down. Before leaving, my uncle handed me a spare key and gave me a list of instructions. Feed the dog twice a day. Take the trash out every Thursday. Lock every door before bed. Then he paused. There was one more thing. Never open the basement door. I laughed. Why? He didn't smile. Just don't. I assumed he was storing expensive tools or wanted to keep the dog out. I didn't ask again. The first 3 nights were completely normal. I worked on my laptop downstairs, watched television, and went to bed around midnight. The dog, Max, followed me everywhere. On the 4th night, things changed. Around 2 in the morning, Max suddenly stood up from his bed. His ears perked. He stared toward the basement door. Then he began growling. Not barking, growling. Low, constant. I called his name. He ignored me. His eyes never left the basement. Eventually, he backed away and hid beneath the kitchen table. I'd never seen a dog act like that. I walked over and placed my hand on the basement doorknob. The growling became louder. I stepped back. Whatever was bothering him, I wasn't interested in finding out. The next morning, I called my uncle. I told him Max had been acting strangely. There was a long silence. Then he simply said, "Keep the basement closed." Nothing else. That night, I decided to sleep earlier. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke to a loud thump from downstairs. Another, Then another. It sounded like someone hitting the basement door from the inside. 3 slow knocks. Silence. 3 more. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The Wi-Fi had gone out too. I looked toward my bedroom door. Max was sitting in the hallway, whining. He wouldn't come into the room. The knocking continued for almost 10 minutes before suddenly stopping. I barely slept. The following afternoon, while taking out the trash, I met the elderly woman who lived next door. She asked if I was staying at my uncle's house. I told her I was watching it while he was away. She nodded. Then she asked a question that made me uncomfortable. "Have you heard the knocking yet?" I stared at her. "How did you know?" She looked back at the house. "Your uncle heard it too. For years." Before I could ask anything else, she wished me luck and walked away. That night, I decided to set up my phone to record the hallway outside the basement. If someone was breaking in, I'd have proof. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the knocking started again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. I stayed in my room. Max hid under the bed. Around 2:40, everything became quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard something else. A voice. Soft. Almost impossible to hear. It sounded exactly like my uncle. Opened the door. I felt every hair on my arm stand up. He was 1,000 miles away. The voice came again. "Open the door. Please." Max suddenly barked for the first time all week. Loud. Aggressive. The voice stopped immediately. Morning couldn't come fast enough. The first thing I did was check my phone recording. The hallway was empty the entire night. No movement. No shadows. Nothing. But the audio was different. The microphone had clearly captured the knocking. Then, my own footsteps, slowly walking toward the basement. I remembered never leaving my room. Yet the recording continued. A hand reached for the doorknob. The basement door slowly opened. The camera fell sideways. The recording ended. I checked the hallway outside. The phone was exactly where I had left it, still facing the basement. The door remained closed. Locked. I couldn't explain what I'd heard, or what the recording showed. I packed my bags. I didn't care about the money anymore. Before leaving, I called my uncle. I told him everything. When I mentioned the recording, he went completely silent. Finally, he asked one question. "Did you see inside?" I told him no. He let out a breath. "Good. Don't ever go back." A week later, my uncle returned home. He never brought up the basement again. Neither did I. Months passed before curiosity got the better of me. I searched county records online. The house had been built in 1968. Nothing unusual. Then I found an old newspaper clipping. The original owner had disappeared without a trace. His family claimed the last place they ever saw him was in the basement. No body was found. The case was eventually closed. To this day, my uncle still lives in that house. Max is still alive. But according to my cousin, every few nights, someone knocks on the basement door from the inside. 3 times. Always 3. And no matter who hears it, the basement door is never opened.